as a kid and not remembering the context with stuff and things like that. Because I think at the time, all I cared about was the vampire stuff, and I didn't care about the romantic stuff or things like that. All I wanted to see was the horror aspect of it, and that was it. But just to get you some ground set here, it starts at a church in Grometa. A man and a boy, Ben Mears and Mark Partee, are filling small bottles with holy water. When one of the bottles begins to emit an eerie supernatural glow, Mears tells Mark that they found us again. Knowing an evil presence is nearby, they decide to stay to fight it. So it opens up on a mystery level. You don't know what you're getting out of this movie whenever you first hear it. You're like, Salem's Lot, what's that? Right? But here's the thing. Whenever you look at Salem's Lot, this movie has not aged well. This movie really is cringeworthy. And through this movie, there's even within a 3-hour time frame, this movie is not as good as I was hoping it would be, as I remembered as a kid. But underneath that, there's even the part where basically the main character comes into town and he winds up hitting on this girl that just happens to be reading his book. And he goes, well, and also too, I like how the girl calls him out. Aren't you married? Oh, I winded up, my wife died like 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, dude, you're just gone into this small town. You don't know anybody. It's been a while since you've been in this town, since you were in high school probably. And now you're hitting on this girl. That to me was a little cringeworthy for me. But what worked for you as far as the setup goes?
Well, that first setup took out a big plot point for potentially in the film. In the book, Susan doesn't know off the bat that his wife died. It's actually found out by Susan's mom, who's really against Ben. She was really hoping that Susan would end up with Floyd Tibbets, and she was really rooting for that couple. And she uses Ben keeping his wife's death a secret to kind of ruin their relationship. So, one of the many differences in the books. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I hope I can see why they did it. It's kind of like a side story between Susan, Floyd, and Ben. But that's something that I'm more interested to see because Susan's mom is she really opposes Ben in the books. Not once did she actually like him.
Okay, so she doesn't even like the guy at all. So no. She's kind of like has her guard up the whole time about him, just like how basically the whole entire town does, in a sense, because of the fact that he wants to go ahead and write a book about the Marston house. So that's also another thing that everybody's wondering about too. So is that part of the book too? Is about everybody's has their guard up in this town about him because he's just a stranger that just came into the town wanting to write about the Marston house?
I really didn't get a vibe from the book that everyone was kind of against him. I'm sure they were questioning on why he was there. Right. But the Marston house is pretty much its own character. There's a really big backstory about the previous owner of the Marston house, and it kind of sets the tone on why Straker and Barlow are there. So it was a very interesting. After watching the movie first, it was a very interesting little tidbit on the history of the Marston house.
I would like to see them dive more into the history of the Marston house versus just let the house be the house. You know what I'm saying? Because, it seems like to me the house was more than just a house to me, just while watching the film. So I wanted them to be able to explore more with the Marston's house with the remake. Because with this one, you didn't really get much out of it. All you got was, okay, there's a strange antique dealer that happens to be living in the Marston house. And then you have, of course, the main character also doing the investigation within the Marston house. Stuff like that, to want to write a new novel, which is also kind of like a tip of the hat to Stephen King if he was going to go into a small town and also hit on this girl too. But I think that, like I said, this is definitely outdated, but I would like to see more groundwork within the Marston house,
right?
Because I know that